Thank you so much. At the outset, I know it's an afternoon session and it's a CEO panel, so all delegates welcome to the session, and I'm going to ensure that we keep you awake. And this is going to be really, really enlightening in many which ways, because this is not going to be a conventional discussion where we're going to only preach. We're going to wear thinking hats, get a few things about some of the experiences that have been drawn out from the past. A lot of things will come together. So it's more like a blue skying discussion from the CEO, but CEOs being CEOs, you can also expect them to be very clear and put a lot of key asks and takeaways and further guidance as well. So with that, kicking off the session, thank you so much. It's a fantastic panel. I wouldn't risk introducing the panel because, introducing a panel as this will consume a huge amount of time. And I'm sure all of you would have read up their profiles. So I'm really, really fortunate to be moderating this particular session. Thank you so much for being on this panel. Look forward to a very enriching discussion and some key takeaways. At the beginning, just want to lay down a few points as concepts. First and foremost, I really believe that this is the era of people transformation. I would even dare to say that people transformation assumes an industry status, particularly post this pandemic. So here is the opportunity, and I was just hearing in closing about what Raj Raghavan had to say, particularly on the technology part of it. So there's a huge opportunity if we were to look ahead as far as capabilities are concerned, where business will only thrive if we are able to bring business, people, and technology together. I call it the triad of success, transformation as an industry today. Pandemic has really left us with lots of opportunities. And in fact, the industry has got divided into three buckets. Some of them who managed to survive, some of them who have managed to cover ground and really level themselves. Some of them have used the opportunity to become excellers. Yeah, so I call them survivors, levelers, and the excellers. And I don't know whether it's the adversity that brings out the best in all of us, but this adversity has definitely invoked a lot of spirit and passion in this entire people part of the world, and people have really stepped up. And again, talking about this particular community of learning specialists or the CLOs or the heads of learning, they were caught really unaware, where they had to really step up the entire game and take it to another level. Because right from building capabilities to demonstrating that a lot can be done by being remotely connected as well, was something which had no precedence whatsoever. And I think this community really, really shaped up well. We're going to have some tenets of this falling into a discussion. I also believe, and I call it, the 4C philosophy in our Talavi business and research model, where I say if you have to draw out the best of people, I think culture, the second one being capabilities, the third one, contribution. And this CEO panel will definitely emphasize on that, because at the end of the day, performance is just an effort. At the end of the day, what we contribute as business objectives is something that's got to be a focus. So that's the third C. And finally, I think we've all got to build business and consumer and customer credibility. So again, just to reiterate, I'm talking of culture, capabilities, contribution, and credibility. Also, I fully aware this particular community of learning specialists, the game has changed, the business model has changed. All of you need to develop just in time, deliver something which is very relevant and does not have too much of a shelf life, and also empowering the learning. So there's not, a huge organization where you can plan, you can really develop a lot of stuff, try prototypes, and then deliver. Maybe the time runs out. So completely aware of those challenges as well. So with that, let's open this debate and let's open this particular conversation. We're going to focus on 4 or 5 major threads. So let me go on the first discussion thread, and I'm sure all of us want to hear the CEOs very, very sharply and succinctly on one aspect which has been really ringing through my mind at least. So the question to all of you, and I would give the order in a particular format. Maybe Rajiv Nair would go first, but subsequently we'll cascade into the others, and would urge all of you to be brief From a CEO lens, what are the top two or three deliverables that really comes to your mind in the world of today? And keep it as objective as you can, and you don't have to narrate instances. Time permitting, we will build it somewhere in the debate. But what are the asks? What are the deliverables that's top of your mind for them to deliver? So, Rajiv, maybe you go first.
Yeah, thank you, Rajesh, and thank you, RAI, for inviting us on this panel. So I try to be as succinct as possible. I think the first and foremost requirement for any learning professional in a retail or a business itself is to contribute to business success. So one important thing in retail is the fact that the cascading of business plans for the organization at the top level to the second line and to the ground level is extremely crucial. I think where we miss the plot at some cases, the fact that the top management has a vision or an objective, but the last man on the ground is probably not able to grasp it. And that's a responsibility of the CLO that every single member of the business learns it. Business skill sets have to be evolved to match these expectations or aspirations of the organization. So I think skill set development building is extremely crucial. And to match that, also, there are a lot of changes that keep happening. I'll give you an example. When the pandemic happened, there was a sudden leapfrogging towards technology. Everybody wanted to be a technology driven organization. Now, the point is the fact that that calls for a complete management change or a change management of people at all levels to be able to see the business from the lens of technology. Now, that change management is also the responsibility of the CLO. The ROI that actually gets put across, because one of the points that keeps coming is the fact that you can do tons and tons of training, but what is a business outcome or result that you're getting? To be able to justify the ROI on training for the business in terms of measurable results, I think that's an important thing. And last but not the least, culture building and building values for the organization, which aligns with the goals and objectives of the organization. I think that's very crucial. Because somewhere down the line, I think we need to be one organization, one vision, one goal, and for which we need a common set of values and culture, which needs to cascade across the organization. That's something that is the responsibility of the CLO to help propagate within the organization. That would be my set of priorities from the CLO.
Thank you, Rajiv. That was indeed sharp, and I did pick the 4 points. It needs to reach the last mile. I call it the chairman to the workman or the associate level. Great point. Skill sets you did talk about. I love the change management part of it. And finally, you stressed a lot about culture. Great. Manish, can we, what are your builds on this particular? What are the deliverables that you would advocate?
So apart from what Rajiv have covered, see, I would say, as in if I look at typical learning organizations or learning structures, they've always been attuned to deliver incremental results. They've never been attuned to deliver exponential results. I think that's the biggest change that needs to come across. And I think when I look at it, I'll sum it up very clearly in terms of what I expect from a learning structure within my organization is to define the capability or skill gap for the business of tomorrow. So it's very, very simple, as in terms of saying it's very easy in terms of saying I'll do incremental changes in terms of probably teaching a front end guy in terms of how to sell better, or somebody else in terms of giving an Excel training or something, finance for non-finance person. But then how do you define as to what is the requirement of a business in a change environment, and what are the gaps on capabilities that we need to fulfill? I think if you are able to do that as a learning organization, you will be able to do everything else. So I would just stress on one single point in terms of defining the capability or skill gap.
Thank you, Manish. You released some time as well, but I'll come back to this. So if you could, in your own mind, construct this, because I'm going to come back on the deficit part of it. How do you really predict some of those skills in a highly disruptive? That's a discussion thread by itself. So I'll come back to you. But thank you so much. I think that's been a good value add. Can I turn to Sadashiv, if you can come in? And are there any other distinct points that you would want to add or emphasize a little more?
Yeah, so thanks, Rajesh. I think first I would say I'll add another C to what you added. You added 4 Cs, and my C would be curiosity. I think how does the CLO maintain the curiosity in the organization? And I'm possibly, I can see Himanshu, Manish, I think we've been there, Rajiv, we've been there for so many years now. And the curiosity never goes, if you ask me. I mean, there's still many questions which I can't explain on consumption. There's still some categories which remain very low on penetration. Why do people buy more tops than bottoms in apparel? I think those are some questions which are always there. So one C definitely which I would like the CLO to retain is curiosity and do it well. In Indian, we call it the Adbhut Rasa, to have the wonder, to have the curiosity. So I would ask him to retain the Adbhut Rasa. I would say, like Rajiv mentioned, I think we are going the tech way. Everything is being seen as a process. We are trying to break down things into smaller particles which we can monitor, track, and that's what is going to be. But frankly, I feel the CLO, other than doing this, has to have one more part, which is bringing the wholesomeness. And I can give an experiment. We have decided to kind of create a special shopping day for senior citizens. We actually broke it down into 40 processes and got everything done. But frankly, the wholesomeness of finally making them comfortable to come in a shopping environment and shop. Now, if those 40, just adding them together would not do it. So the CLOs to stitch them together and bring everything wholesome in a wholesome manner. So we are going in a tech and digital, and you've been a custodian of that, where you break down everything into smaller attributable tech pieces. But we need a CLO to bring the wholesomeness together. And last, something which is obvious, and maybe it's my hangover. I worked in FMCG and then now in retail. I think we call it learning, but frankly, if you, at least the upbringing for me has been, it's been training. It's always been a top-down thing. And frankly, I think the first thing which I would want the CLO to be is be a learner himself. I mean, there are enough and more learnings there. And we often talk of the inverted pyramid, but let's say if you have to bring the CLO and say, does he believe in the inverted pyramid? Because frankly, after coming from a multinational FMCG, all my learnings in retail, other than, of course, few of our charismatic bosses, have come from the floor. I mean, how to sell a luggage, how to sell a backpack. I mean, you name it. I mean, you name any consumption pattern. It comes from the bottom. So I would expect the CLO to live up to his designation and be a learner himself. If he learns well, I think he's going to make the whole organization learn. So these would be my 3 points to you.
Excellent value add. And I love the last point particularly. And I've been very strongly advocating that in the research labs as well, where I'm saying particularly people at the C level also need to be hard skilled. Yeah, because, we all believe that we've got to be developed, but there are a lot of skills that we have lost out as we grew up. And maybe that's another point when you were talking about that moving from learning to training is one reflection that came. But I love that wholesomeness part of it. And I know Rajiv did touch upon it in the form of culture, but you spoke more about from an experience bit. So I think CLOs who are listening to this, or the HR guys who are listening to this, may be able to get the point across, where you stitch a culture, at the same time you deliver a complete customer experience. Thanks, great value add. Can I look up to you, Himanshu, on the deliverables that you would have from this community?
Himanshu, you're on mute.
Sorry,
Himanshu, you're on mute. Yeah.
Most of the points have been, of course, covered, and between Rajiv, Manish, and Sadashiv, I think they have virtually covered everything. But there are 2 or 3 points which I would like to bring to the table, and these are all contextual. Each of these points are actually contextual in the current context. So as a counterpoint to what Sadashiv said, which is the Gestaltian principle of the sum of parts actually coming together, connecting, becoming more, I think equally, the ability to break down these into subcomponents will become extremely relevant. And I'll tell you why I think that. I think it is important because we all, during the lockdown and post-lockdown, we have all achieved much higher levels of efficiency than we have done ever in the past. Growth will come for sure this year, coming year. Growth will come in leaps and bounds, but those efficiencies need to remain in place. So that, to my mind, is the reverse. Actually, what Sadashiv said is fantastic, but also the reverse is equally true in terms of breaking it down into components to make sure that the efficiencies which have been gained in each of the subcomponents, I'll not spend too much time, we can discuss this later, but each of the components need to, even with growth, work at least similar efficiency, if not more. So that is going to be extremely important. So that's one point which is contextual in the context that we are in. The second point, which is there, and I think that is equally important from my perspective, is that for almost a year, the whole environment was quite closed. Everybody was just wanting to survive. And in this whole context, the talent pipeline internal is absolutely critical, because attrition is going to be there and attrition is going to be real. We need to avoid it and reduce it, but we can't prevent it. It's going to happen. Imagine for almost a year, it's a static market. As the market is opening up, attrition is going to be a reality of life. And to really take care of the business requirement, and growth is going to come our way. Each of the businesses will have huge growth in the coming year. How do you have an internal talent pipeline? Skill sets developed, tested, tried, and created. I think, again, contextual this is, specifically in the context that we are in. So that is going to be equally important. These two are related to specifics of the business. And the third one actually has nothing to do with business, but it is very contextual again, is in the environment, the customers actually have been all constrained in their houses, even when they're going to shopping malls or our individual shops, they're just going in, doing their transactions and going back. But now with the vaccine in place, now with the markets opening up, the coming year will see, like it has happened post the pandemic in every era, is going to see a humongous amount of joy and happiness and people wanting to go out, meet with people, etc., etc. And when they come to our space, or their space, which is our stores, we need to create that happiness. If the teams are not happy, they must reflect sheer abundance of happiness to cater to what is going on. So this has got nothing to do directly with the business in terms of a metric, but they must. And the role of the CLO in creating that is immense. So those are my 3 points, Rajesh.
Thank you so much, Himanshu. I think 3 very interesting points. And from a research standpoint, I'm tempted to ask you if you could, give us the code or the algorithm also for the happiness, the consumerism that you touched upon. I think these are all very, very good topics to really focus on. I'm sure the CLO community is also going to come at you and say, tell us also how to do it so that we get our act together. Great points. Thank you for a tremendous value add that you brought in. But my mind goes back to what, Rajiv said at the beginning, the ROI, and that's really ringing in my mind because the CLO community has been really, really, being banged on this particular point again and again. So Rajiv, I will come back to you not now.
Sure.
Maybe I'm giving you time to gather your thoughts, time permitting. But let me turn to Ashish. Ashish, I know you have a lot of practice views, but just focusing on, and it's always difficult to go last because most of the points would have got consumed. But nevertheless, if there's something distinct that you have in your mind, please bring it out.
I think I'll try to summarize. For me, I think the 3 most important factors, I think, which plays in the CLO's head, as far as deliverables are concerned, for me, I think the culture comes first. I think rightly highlighted one of the panelists that the CLO himself or the L&D lead has to be a learner first. And then only you can, inculcate that culture in the organization. So the process has to be capturing the learning rather than making some special modules now and then for learning. That is one. Secondly, I think most importantly, technology comes first as far as L&D is concerned. So I would love my CLO and L&D lead to be really, really using technology, 100% usage in all the L&D programs. That's number 2. And the third part is, I think post-pandemic, I think all the skill gaps are widened further for each and every function. So I think there's a time to recalibrate all your L&D programs right away. Work on your content. You'll have to curate very differently. You'll have to be out of your central classroom teaching. You'll have to be focusing on more of distributed and cross-functional training. So I think content you need to work on and ensure that content is not only just effective, but measurable in terms of results we're expecting out of them.
Thank you so much, Ashish. I think great points. I hope I had an opportunity to actually draw out a word cloud because I think there's about 15 points that have come through and very, very distinct, but at the same time, extremely rich in terms of the overall value. I'm going to turn to you, Ashish, if you could stay on unmute. From a business landscape, how have the CLOs in this learning community particularly kept pace? I know it's a little bit of a, I'm not giving you space for storification, but what have been the hits and misses? I mean, what are one or two things that have really gone well? What do you think, are some of the misses? So I want you to wear a learning hat and maybe a reflection hat and then share your quick insights here.
I think, Rajesh, nobody was prepared for this pandemic, including our CLO and our L&D leads. So I think what we did during pandemic, beside getting engagement done for all your employees across front end and the back end through Zoom calls, I think we were stakeholders, HR, business, and technology, and working with separate different tools and requirements, not only for the assessment and the gap analysis, but also working on the collaboration piece when the pandemic hit. And we were not prepared for that. It just accelerated the entire process for us. So as far as assessment is concerned, we use Metal. I think we assessed almost 450, 500 managers across our stores at the back end and some managers at the front end. We obviously came up with some behavioral and functional gaps. We identified that. We made very specific focused learning programs for them. We gave them a SWOT analysis for themselves to come back and tell them which area they need improvement upon. And at the same time, when the pandemic hit, I think we were ready, literally using Kaizala, which is again Microsoft tool, a work management tool for collaboration and working from the remote places we were working on. So I think all fell in place literally for us. And besides that, there were several other technology pieces we put together for the front end and the back end. So I think we were lucky that way. But I think the myth which remains in my head is that there's not 100% adoption, and it's more about culture, which I think Rajiv started with. Is the culture which has to be from top to bottom, and the whole impression I got is that we are a typical retail organization, so are so many on the panelists, but technology was always more of a department rather than being the technology first. Me coming from e-commerce background, I think I could have that advantage internally to push it, but I think I need my all managers and across literally coming forward and saying that, yeah, this is part of life rather than just being one of the departments we used to go and fetch our ERP data from.
Thank you, Ashish. I really like the point, particularly about the business on culture piece that you mentioned. I work with a lot of clients, and that's one area where, there's a particular pattern. And I'm sure, all of you being CEOs can reflect on this particular point that I'm trying to give. Yeah. There's a lot of review process that the management has put the organization into. Just because they connected, I guess the entire processes of reviews have gone up manifold. So the governance has come under pressure, and people have started feeling the pressure of, multiple calls, multiple reviews, too many tiers coming into structure, which ideally was not there in the physical world. So I think that's also trickling into the culture part that you mentioned, Ashish, just as a point of value add for me. I mean, when I'm giving it from my various clients that I'm working with. So Rajiv, I'm going to rope you into the same point. Hits and misses, of course, but I want you to anchor on this particular point of the ROI that you mentioned, and it stuck on me. ROI is a very hard one. And this community keeps on asking, tell me how do you really measure the ROI? Number one. Number two is, can you put a little bit of an objective guidance towards how does one really track effectiveness in the ROI? And you can stay at the pandemic when things were so unstructured. Really, things were done more like a prototype experimentation. A lot of failures happened. Few things really clicked well. No precedents whatsoever. How does one really get into an ROI like this? Sorry, I mean, I'm coming back at a hard one on this, but will be great to hear you.
Yeah. So a couple of examples, Rajesh. I think, we had to kind of spin the organization on its head during this particular period, because one part was whether it's an unprecedented event, but we also did not know what is the end date for the event, because, we had some minor ideas of the Spanish flu and stuff like that, which said that pandemic lasts for 2 years, 2.5 years. So how long is this break going to be, something that people did not really realize? So I think that was one big, gap that we actually saw. So we had to make some changes to the organization the way, we could. So actually our learning team immediately said the fact that how do I contribute to business? First of all, okay, because rather than saying I will help other people to contribute to business, how do I contribute? We actually coined an academy out of nowhere during this particular period. So we have been in the training business for people, therapists and doctors and others for the last 15, 17 years. We actually set up a training academy while things were in the pandemic phase. We actually used all our training resources to come together and start doing multiple webinars to upscale people who may not be part of the Kaya business, but could learn about skin and hair and can find gainful employment. So we actually started off by saying the fact that could our training team build a business model of training people who are looking to upscale, because there was a lot of people who were out of jobs during this particular period, right? And from there, the idea of a complete Kaya Academy has come in place. And now we have a profitable business model out of training, which was otherwise an expense center for the business. So what used to cost us 3 to 5 crores a year today will probably turn out at least a couple of crores of profit in the next financial year, which would be there. Now, while doing that, we also wore the hat of what we should be doing to help the community while doing this. So I'll tell you how we went about it. We actually charged our courses way lower than what the market would otherwise charge, not because we want to acquire a lot of people, because we felt people were in need and in difficulty. To find a loan for an employee or anybody in the market during this particular period was also difficult. So we have actually created a series of courses today, which is also certified by organizations like the NAPS and skill development councils and stuff like that, where you might also at some point be incentivized by the government for building up skill development. So part of the cost goes from us, part of the cost comes from the government, which is still under works, but there is a potential opportunity for us to create, if not thousands, at least hundreds of employable people in the market around the business that we have experience in. So that's point number one. So Kaya Academy is just a reality now, and it will become a significant part of our business model as we go forward. Second is we realized the fact that while we are at this service, we had a halt because our business are physical touch feel businesses, where people have to actually touch people. And there was a huge fear at the start of surface transmission and stuff like that. So we were quite sure that even if the business opens up in the month of July, August, people are not going to come in the same numbers as they would come in the past. So we started upskilling all our employees around our product business, which otherwise is a 25-30% of our total contribution. And we have created a goal now going into the next financial year to make product 40-45% of our product, of our total mix. So what did we do? We actually upskilled our people through the pandemic on product sales. We actually, during that pandemic period, also started doing localized deliveries using our salespeople who were reaching out to our consumers. So you wouldn't believe it. During the period of pandemic, I think we reached out to close to about 65,000 customers one-on-one. Okay, actually calling them up, discussing with them, identifying their issues, problems, but at the same time also looking at what are their requirements. If I can't fulfill the requirements through services, at least I can fulfill the requirement to product. So that's point number 2. Point number 3 is that we are upskilling our entire e-commerce team today to be able to, and in fact, we have widened the number of people and the capability skill sets for e-commerce in the organization to say that if e-commerce was contributing for us 8 to 9% of the total business, how it could become a 25% contributor to the business. So we also looked at the business verticals which are likely to take a faster turn going forward. And we were upskilling people during this particular period to say how business can move. So when we look at the performance of e-commerce going forward, we have identified gaps in the skill sets, and we have actually invested towards covering those skill sets which are there. So we are working on modular programs. We are working on external programs for people to be able to participate in this particular growth story of e-commerce. Okay, I'll just conclude with one last one, is that we have skilled professionals in the business, which are doctors, right? We actually trained all our doctors to do web consultation during this particular period. We actually reached out to almost 6,000 customers during the space of the first 4 months of pandemic to actually reach out to customers through means like Teams and others. At the same time, also tied up with companies like M-Fine and 1MG and companies like that to be able to build a complete vertical of web consultation, because we knew that even after the pandemic and the business opens, there may be people who would be averse to the idea of coming to a physical clinic to consult with a doctor. Now that itself will become a business vertical for us in future. All of this, while conceptualized by business, was facilitated by the L&D team. And L&D team was the one who was working with the staff on the floor, with the doctors on the business, with the managers to say this change is needed and let's utilize this time for effecting this change. So these are examples of how the ROI towards business was actually impacted by the L&D team during this.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Rajiv. It was a fairly long but it had a lot of depth, and I'm glad you covered some of the stuff which possibly would not have got covered. And since you're talking beyond boundaries, I like the part of the academy that you mentioned, and I think the best part that was music to the ears for a lot of people who are listening to this particular conversation is learning as a revenue stream. I mean, that's phenomenal. So I think this community can look at that as a profit center and move on. From an ROI, even 2 or 3 things that really resonated with me at any point of time is, one can measure capability shift, delta change in capability. The second is talent readiness. And Himanshu did talk about it while he addressed the objective of losing out talent, attrition. But he said, how can you really address that point? And I'm building on that. So I think the talent readiness part of it. And the third, of course, is the performance shift. I mean, all of us will need to deliver much higher part of it. I don't call it performance anymore. I call it contribution, because at the end of the day, I think that quantifiable part of it, Rajiv, that you've been alluding to, I know it was a fairly long one, but I think it was worth every second in the clock.
Sure.
Thank you so much for doing this. Manish, I'm going to come to you on a slight bit of an architecture question, which possibly touches the heart and the soul of all the learning professionals. So what do you think should be a good CLO construct be? I mean, should they be good talent specialists? Could they be good learning delivery guys? Are they someone who understand the overall content? What should be what's your advice in terms of what should they learn, unlearn, etc., etc.? And it's perfectly fine to have a little bit of a broader and contentious views. But what are some of the top attributes that you would advocate that they really focus on? This is about themselves now, building for themselves.
Sure. So see, effectively, as in if I look at it, one of the fundamental things as in that a learning professional should look at is in terms of understanding of the business. And when I say understanding of the business, it's not only about in terms of the current business, in terms of the trajectory the business is going to take over a period of time. So if we look at, especially in a scenario like today, as in we are talking of business transformations, so things aren't the same what they were as in a year back. But if we look at a 3-year horizon, as in things are going to be very, very different. So you're talking of, like Rajiv said, everybody is talking about e-commerce being anywhere between 25 to 35% of business. And then as in, when we again think of it, when we are talking digital not only in terms of sense of selling. It is about the transformation as an organization. So it is about every single process that you are undertaking, as in digitization is going to be the way. So when I look at that particular individual, I think emphasis in terms of understanding present and future business, the processes, skills, and then I think most importantly in terms of use of technology. I think those are things, and then again, as in you'll have software skills in terms of change management. I think that's something that's going to be inbuilt, inborn in those professionals. But I think the two important things would be in terms of understanding the trajectory of business, the skill sets that would be required accordingly, and then the use of technology to augment those skill sets or to fulfill those needs of the organization.
Thank you so much, Manish. Sadashiv, would you want to build on this? I want a slight bit of a different views as well. While Manish has definitely added 3 or 4 tangible points, would you have some different dimensions to add to this?
Yeah, possibly I'll just kind of flow out from your earlier question to Rajiv, and then what you asked Manish as well, and possibly take a little bit of example from the pandemic. I think, as you know, for us, it was a different case. I mean, if pandemic was like the retail industry having an earthquake, in our group, it was also sitting in a giant wheel in the earthquake. So both the floor and both the giant wheel, both were simultaneously moving. So on a lighter note, I think we can afford to do that now. So I think, if you look at some of the things which happened, I think one of the things which the CLO did, or let's say all of us, I'm not restricting the CLO, was really building pride and belief, because it was very important. We were in a vulnerable condition. So it was very important to go back and say, hey, listen, your largest competitor might have done this. Hey, listen, online might have done this, but this is what you can do. So we actually, let's say, took out a pick-up at store as a big thing and built it because that was our advantage to have pick-up at store for retail stores. So we really, building pride and belief would be one thing which I would really go back and say. I think what happens in retail, and I'm sure some of you will resonate with this, if there's a problem in one store, rest assured 99% it's been solved in some other store in your chain, but it somehow doesn't come out. So I would say really, how do you aggregate that? And since you're from that field, Rajesh, I would say if you have to really look at a learning on demand kind of a mode where there is a solution which has already happened somewhere, and I'm having this problem 400 kilometers or 1,000 kilometers away, how do I pick it up rather than having someone else interface? So that's where interfacing them, getting them the handshake done will be very important. And last, during the pandemic, again, what we realized is that the people who have the best knowledge are possibly not the best trainers. So I may know everything about making the business go digital, but I may not be a good trainer myself. So how do you kind of build tech or build processes to enable me to make training going? So I would really look at, just to continue on the two thoughts, to say, if things change rapidly, and then if you really enable stuff, then these are the three things which possibly can help things differently. And that's the way a CLO will have to approach. I think it's non-linear in nature. Nothing is linear in this case. And I'll build on my earlier point saying, keep listening. I think, and that's what he would do. I'm taking things like tech as hygiene now. I think we can't run away from it. But when there's a multiple store, multiple city operation, these are some of the things which you have to keep at the center.
Good. I think there's tremendous value add, but are you alluding to the point of aggregation of a lot of specialists? So delivery is one, content is one, capabilities is one, architecture is one. So I think it's clearly becoming a function of aggregating a lot of specialists who come together for a purpose. Have I picked that right? Or
so let's say even in the pandemics, few of our stores sold huge amount of luggage and backpacks. I still don't know why, but they sold, and they had a way to do it. Now, there was a learning in it. Now, how do you capture that learning and produce it for the rest of the country?
Sure.
It would not naturally come in our fold, but there was already some people solving something. Maybe they've gone to the wholesale markets, maybe they've gone to the neighboring feeder markets, and they've kind of created some demand for it. But how did you kind of bring it out? So I'm referring to solutions which are there in the system somewhere. How do you aggregate together? I mean, if you have to be the next... If you have to be the Netflix or Uber of training solution, how do you do it? Where I can just pick up whatever I want.
Great point. So develop solutions more from practices and learnings. Just being conscious of time, we have very little time left, but nevertheless, I think Himanshu, I'm going to ask you one thing, and you did possibly wear a thinking hat right up front when you asked for this deliverable. So the question is very specific and targeted in that particular direction, because when you spoke about talent readiness and when you spoke about particularly attrition part of it and also building talent pipeline, I'm asking you, how does one really, and I did touch upon this with someone, but I really want you to wear a thinking hat and tell me, how does one really build learning capability? How does one sitting today know what are some of the stuff that I need to shred in the next 3 months, 6 months, so that the learning heads are really competent and capable enough to ready the entire organization in that direction? What would be your guidance to them? And since you spoke in that direction, I'm going to keep you in that trajectory. Himanshu, you're on mute.
You're on mute.
So I think there are quite a few components to what you're saying, solutioning to the issue that you're bringing up. And I think one is, of course, the approach of having multiple specialists, etc. But that apart, I think it's really what we need in the foreseeable future. And we are discussing a future of 10 to 12 months. I think beyond that, we'll see what plays out. What we are essentially saying is that there is a combination of yin and yang, the left side of the brain and the right hand side of the brain. And I think what will be very important is you need at least, a combination. Maybe a single individual does not have a combination of these skills. Yeah. So I would actually look at the learning team rather than the, CLO as the one. I would look at the learning team and say, does this team have the capabilities which ensures 3 or 4 things? One, and I think everyone has been talking about it, alignment with the business deliverables. In my case, for example, in our case, business deliverables, the normal ones are there, which is your NPS score needs to improve, They need to improve the QPB, and all the KPIs are there. But along with this, one of the important ones for me is the efficiency. Yeah, it may be different for different people, but I think we became very efficient during the lockdown and post the lockdown, and that efficiency needs to be sustained. And that's going to be a huge challenge when you'll start getting a growth of 30-40% over a low base. Then there will be challenges which will come in terms of everybody asking for more resources. And that efficiency which has been built in needs to be maintained. Yeah, by efficiency, I don't mean the same amount of manpower, exactly the same resources, but the output per resource or per cost that you're doing, that efficiency needs to be maintained. So that is a key challenge. And for that, you need people who can work along this and figure this out. Yeah. You have the second part, which is the whole concept that I said, which is in terms of really creating happiness on the floor. There you need somebody who goes beyond these metrics, because you can't train on these metrics and get them to that. Yeah. So how do you mix these things up? And last but not the least, the talent pipeline cannot be just the talent pipeline for the sake of the pipeline. It needs to go through assessment. It needs to go through development center. It needs to go through the skill development, covering up the skills, covering the skill gap, etc. So it needs to be, you need to work on that as well. So I actually don't see CLO as a CLO as we are saying. There's one person having all these abilities and skills. But if you look at it, the learning team per se, that learning team must be able to work as per this. And the best method, to my mind, which we have used in our organization, and maybe not it's the best method, but to my mind, is I have actually made the person who does the learning anchor the budgeting process for next year. All challenges will come through.
Awesome.
All the challenges will come through. Yeah. So and it comes through straight. Because when you're saying you have to manage this growth with so many people, the retail system pushes back. Then the learner has to say, but I will, learning team has to say, look, we will enable this. Yeah. They're saying, how do we do this? This thing they're saying, we'll give you an internal talent pipeline and do ABC. Similarly, somebody else brings up and says, but look, you are now asking our people to pick up e-com orders. It's 10-15% of each store's orders. E-com orders, and e-com orders are tricky because the time is short, and you need to pick so many of these with limited manpower. So you are saying I will drive an efficiency. So all the solutioning that is coming in, of course, a lot of it will come from the management team like us, but at least they are fully cognizant, they're fully aware, and they're involved in the process. Because the biggest challenge is not going to be growth next year. Growth will come. How do we manage it through a happy organization in an efficient manner will be the primary challenge, not the growth itself.
Thank you so much, Himanshu. You really touched upon something which I've been working as a research for quite some time, is the learning predictive, as I call it, and the predictive which delivers business value. So I think you've given me also a few tenets that I'm going to focus on. I'm going to connect with you on this. Very interesting. It delivers a lot of enterprise value going ahead, delivers a lot of consumer value. So I'll connect with you. I love the point of, business aligned, particularly being consumer focused, the happiness part of it. And not too many guys talk about such stuff when you talk of business outcome, and then focusing on skill gaps. So learning derivatives, learning predictives, I'll connect with you offline. Ashish, I know it'll be running really short on time, but I know you have some specific views, and I'm going to turn to this particular topic, which is definitely a lot of audience interest. And I know you have specific views on this. Where should the learning organization be housed? I mean, I know it's a little bit of an ornamental question, but nevertheless, I think that hygiene part is a little important for this particular community. Are they got to be business embedded, or have they got to be, in the HR organization? Where do you see it as a CEO? I mean, or you're indifferent? I'm sure others are also wanting to go, but I'll restrict it because this is really short of time. We're 3:15. So Ashish, I know you're brief. So over to you.
Yeah. So I'll spell it out from our perspective. I'm sure bigger organizations can afford a CLO, and you have a completely vertical department working with all the business functions. But as far as we are concerned, I think I tried both, to be honest, Rajesh. I kept it under business initially, the entire L&D piece and the training piece. Then I took it back to HR. But I was not very happy with the outcome. So what I did very differently was I had a management consultant on board, which was directly reporting to me, directly reporting to my desk. And that learning and development piece became my baby. Okay, and I just see Mugdha Rai also asking a very similar question, and it was so true to what we did here. So I took it to my desk, and what I did was got my HR and L&D lead into the room. I got my business functional heads into the room, and I got my IT department. I said, this chief of staff who's reporting directly to me is more of a replica of me. So whatever he comes and works with you, comes from a my direction perspective. So it was very easy for me to get that direction out on 3 departments. So this is what I did, and I think it worked well. And whatever the small touch points I've been able to create through technology, through learnings, through SWOT analysis or gap analysis we've done in the last 1.5 years at SSIPL is purely because of this new model which we inculcated after a couple of experiences of hits and misses within the training department and business. For me, the guy can come from any background. That doesn't matter. What he or she should have is the nimbleness, the whole readjustment while we are moving, at the same time working on the ground with the team, and he has to be a great communicator and a team player.
Great. I think it's 3:17 and we don't have too much of time. Unless, Sadashiv, you're willing to take a 30-second shot at one of the audience questions. I think Ashish has already answered one. 30-second shot. How would you advise companies go digital? How do learning officers really help company go digital? 30 seconds, jive with it.
Okay, so I think digital, if all of us are agreeing, is part of the business. My sincere suggestion would be, don't treat it as one more channel, one more vertical. It is exactly the way we would set up a new store or would set up a new category. So frankly, it is part of life. So treat it just like the way you would do it. Yeah, we all recognize that some of us, we need extra help, but that's about it. I would say make it part of your life. It's part of your business promise, and don't treat it differently as another channel, another stuff. So that would be my 30-second shot at it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I think we've just done great as a panel. I'm not going to risk again summarizing, but this panel has been tremendous in terms of the various stuff that has come out of this particular discussion, right from a strategy to a talent to readiness to capabilities to predictives to the architecture. We have addressed quite a lot. I mean, we have not gone in depth because, in a 45, 50 minutes kind of a session, that's a little bit of a challenge. But nevertheless, what I'm going to do is something on the feet here. Maybe each of you can give a one-sentence takeaway from the others. I think all of you have given pearls of wisdom. I mean, if so, Rajiv, what was your one-sentence takeaway from the rest of the audience or rest of the discussion? Likewise, others, just a one-sentence takeaway for you from this session.
Yeah, I think CLO is a strategic, a strategic mover who actually inculcates change, embraces business, and delivers outcomes. I think that's what I would say the CLO really has got to be for the future.
Awesome. Manish, one sentence takeaway for you.
I think something that Himanshu mentioned, I think it's important, and I'll just add in terms of important to keep happiness in mind, and it's both internal and external consumers.
Awesome. Ashish, can I ask you to sum up in one sentence? So what has been your takeaway from this session?
I think barring whatever the points we have covered, I think the guy has to be impactful in terms of the results we're expecting out of that. I know it's sometimes very, very difficult to measure a lot of training programs we have, but I think there are enough tools right now in the market where you can measure all the programs. So I personally think, barring all the points you have covered, I think he should be able to be a learner first, at the same time be able to measure whatever the results we are actually expecting out of the programs.
Thank you. We're running really short on time. Himanshu, one sentence wrap up from your side.
I think in the coming year, at least, if not the years to come, CLO would be, unlike the past, would be as important as the person who handles product, as the person who handles marketing, etc. It is extremely critical role. And I think what will happen 3-4 years down the line, we don't know. But at least for the coming year, this is a super critical role.
Sheer music. Sadashiv, your take.
Yeah. If the learner CLO has to be a learner, then his only trainer is the customer. So he has to be a customer himself and learn from the customer. So the trainer.
Thank you. Thank you so much, guys. I think it's been an awesome and a fascinating discussion. If I were to wrap up, I would just say one sentence. I think it's very strongly business embedded, highly value driven, futuristic, and maybe limited, visibility. There's lots to do, and you can genuinely contribute big time. Absolutely delighted to have been on this panel and shared this discussion with you. and gained a lot, learned a lot from you guys. We'll stay connected and keep continuing to do the good work in each of your business places and to the association as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Over
Thank
to you,
you,
Lawrence and Hugo.